Messenger.
Good morning, McGraw. Good to be here.
All right. Who is Cora Faith Walker?
So Cora Faith Walker is an incoming state lawmaker from Ferguson. She is a 31-year-old lawyer. She's African-American. She won her primary earlier this year and is unopposed in November. And Friday night, she sent a letter that is just really setting the Missouri legislative world on fire. She sent a letter to Speaker of the House, Todd Richardson, and the minority leaders in the House, the two Democrats who lead the House. And in that letter, she said very simply, "Hi, my name's Cora Faith Walker. I filed a sexual assault report in St. Louis police this week, and I named my rapist as Stephen Roberts Jr., who is also a young black lawyer who is going to be a state rep in Jefferson City this year. He's running unopposed in November. And she's asking legislative leaders to protect her while an investigation into this sexual assault takes place. As I reported Friday night, there is a police investigation into this allegation of sexual assault. And Cora Faith Walker agreed to let me interview her Friday afternoon. And this is a rare case in which somebody who is an alleged victim of a sexual assault is coming forward and telling her story with her name attached. She made it very clear she wants to own her story. She understands that a whole lot of heat is going to come down on her in coming days and weeks. But she and her husband sat there and took all my questions and told their story because she doesn't want to be afraid, and she wants to go to Jefferson City and do the job that she's about to be elected to do.
Tony Messenger, this story is now getting some national attention because of your column and your story. There's a couple of different angles here. One is the police investigation. We don't know how long that will take, but to be Speaker of the House, Todd Richardson, what can he do? What should he do with this information where two of his members, one is petrified to be in the same room with the other one?
I think it's a tough position for him. I don't know legally what all of the ramifications are. I think the important thing that he has to do, and that I think he indicated in the statement that he put forth Saturday, is that he has to take these allegations very seriously. He has a future member of his legislature says, "Look, I'm afraid of this man. Other women might be afraid of this man." And so he's got not just a political situation here, but a workplace situation. The Capitol is a big place, but he's got a woman who's coming into office who is accused, another lawmaker, of rape. And this is a building in which there have been serious accusations of sexual harassment and bad behavior, primarily by men, many of them elected officials, towards young interns, towards other women in the building. This is a building in which there has been lots of problems related to these sorts of issues. And Todd Richardson, to his credit, has said, "Look, I'm going to clean this up." He replaced a speaker who would step down in disgrace over a texting situation with an intern. And so he's got a workplace now where he's got to say to the women in his workplace, "I'm going to do everything in my power to protect you." And there is an investigation going on right now. So it's not just, a woman saying, "Hey, protect me from this guy." There is a police investigation into this crime. And this is a gentleman who has been accused of sexual assault previously. Not charged, says he didn't do it, no prosecution came forward. But I think Todd Richardson's going to have to do something very serious, whether he doesn't allow Mr. Roberts to be seated. I don't know if there's constitutional power for that. I think it's likely that she seeks an ex parte and the court grants her one, and then he's going to have to find a way. How does this man, if he goes forward with his election, represent his constituents while Richardson takes care of protecting the women in his body, in his building?
We should say that both of them are running unopposed in this fall election cycle, right?
Both of them are running unopposed, and we should also say that I spoke with Scott Rosenblum, who is the attorney for Mr. Roberts. Mr. Rosenblum says that the encounter that I reported on was consensual. That is his argument. Mr. Roberts has not yet been charged with any crime. He denies wrongdoing. So that's the status as it relates to that.
Yeah.
I found Cora Faith Walker to be very brave. I found her to be very believable. I wouldn't report serious allegations like that otherwise.
Right.
And my law enforcement sources also find her to be very believable, and they're investigating. So we're going to have to see what happens, but there's no doubt the early part of the legislative session, depending on what happens between now and then, is going to be very complicated.
Tony, in your reporting, the story goes that they called each other up and said, hey, we're going to be two lawyers down there. Let's get together and see how we can work together. She went over to an apartment. She woke up the next morning. It reads, if you're reading between the lines, that there was, according to her story, now you didn't say this is why I'm asking, it was almost like a date rape drug situation. Is that the allegation? Is it not? Because that's the way it kind of reads.
That's the way the facts present themselves. Mrs. Walker was very careful with her words because there's an investigation here. So I did not specifically make that allegation in the column. The facts sure present themselves to be able to come to that conclusion fairly easily. She had 2 glasses of wine. She told me she is not the kind of person that would pass out after 2 glasses of wine. She woke up the next morning and she was in a bed in an apartment in the city of St. Louis that she didn't think she belonged in and didn't remember what happened. Told her husband about it immediately, and they took a while, and this is quite common in sexual assault cases, and it's one of the reasons why they can be so difficult to make in terms of convictions. Is it takes a lot of courage for a woman to come forward in a situation like this, knowing that the publicity can be very difficult. And she and her husband and her family spent several days, more than a couple of weeks, discussing what their options were and what they were going to do in terms of seeking police help and trying to prosecute in a case like this. And ultimately, they decided last week to go to the police. She was interviewed by the police. She asked them to press a case forward, and specifically told them, I've got no problem with my name being on the reports. I'm putting my name out there.
What's been the reaction since you've posted the story at stltoday.com?
It was immediate reaction Friday night. People are shocked by it. It's not the kind of story that you write about very often. A lot of national publications are following it up at this point. Washington Post had a story that they put online yesterday. The lawmakers that she wrote the letter to all issued statements Saturday afternoon. The Democrats have suggested that Mr. Roberts should step aside and, for the sake of the Missouri legislature and the sake of Ms. Walker, not take office after November, let somebody else run and take that seat. That would be a complicated situation. I don't know Mr. Roberts, and while I spoke to him briefly Friday night, have not spoken to him again about this suggestion being made by Jake Hummel and Gail McCann Beatty. So I don't know if that's going to happen, but that's what the Democratic leaders have recommended. I think at some point probably somebody's going to seek an opinion from the Attorney General on this to see what the options are for the legislative body if indeed they both are elected in November and choose to serve. And particularly depending on what the stage of the investigation is. It's one of those cases where I'm not going to be surprised if he's arrested and charged, and I'm also not going to be surprised if a prosecutor says, I can't make a case here, and so it goes away.
Yeah, well, that's a bigger issue. If there's no case, then you have the allegation, and they're both sitting in the chamber down in Jefferson City together.
Yeah, and that becomes quite complicated because I don't know what Mr. Richardson can or will do at that point. I think he still has a responsibility to protect the women in his body, and there is a state representative who is an employee of that Capitol who's going down there saying, I don't want to be in the room with this guy.
Right.
And somehow as an employer, he's going to have to respond to that.
Tony Messenger, it's up on stltoday.com, also in the newspaper. Tony, good work. Thanks for checking in. We'll talk to you soon.